fellow builders, and welcome back to this. This is episode 3 of our Towny Tutorials, and today we are looking at plot types. Guys, if you've been enjoying this series so far and you're finding them helpful, don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell icon to get notifications when we get more tutorials out there. But with that said, let's get straight into the episode. And as I said, today we're looking at plot types. Now, there are loads of different plot types. As you'll know when you play Towny, we start off with default plots, default town plots, default plots for residents. But after that, Towny offers up lots of different types of plots. These can include shop plots, embassy plots, there are farms and wilds, as well as an arena, a jail, even banks and inns. These plots are really good for enhancing the role-playing aspects of your Towny experience, making your town much more interactive and interesting. Now, whilst some of these plots, for example the bank, needs other plugins to be installed by your server owner, the plots themselves will still be controlled by Towny commands themselves, and that's what we're going to start learning in today's episode. So before we do that though, let's just have a quick recap of the basics. Oh, and one quick note, some servers charge money to set plot types, so before you start experimenting with different plot types, just check out by doing /Towny prices, just so that you don't lose too much money whilst figuring all this out. Now obviously we're going to start with the default plot type, and we're going to go through this really quickly because it's super straightforward and most of you will probably be familiar with this already. But as you know, when a mayor claims a plot, it is by default a default plot. Now there are a few commands that the mayor will use there. If they want to sell the plots, they're going to need to set a price. Now you can set a default before you've claimed any plots with the command /town set plot price and then the cost, and then that means every time you do the command plot for sale on a newly claimed plot, it will have that default price already on it. It's the most efficient way. If you want to override, that's also really simple. On a plot that you've just claimed, you can do plot for sale and then the price that you want to put it up for sale for. It's also possible to set a tax rate for plots, and that's done by using the command tset plot tax and then the cost, that is the amount of tax that the player who owns that plot will pay per in-game day. Now this can't be overwritten on a per plot basis. That's the same across every plot in your town. So what that can do is it can make it a bit fairer in your town, so that if one player owns 6 plots and another person only owns 1 plot, that means that the person with the more plots is contributing more money to the upkeep of the town, which is a little bit fairer. As you know, taxes will be collected each Towny day, usually 24 hours, and that plot tax applies to all plot types except 2 plot types, and that's where we're going to get into things today. One is the embassy plot type, and the other is the shop plot type, both of which can have a different tax set by the mayor. So an owner of an embassy or a shop might have to pay more or perhaps even less tax than a normal default plot. Obviously these default plot types always start with the default permissions applied to them, and now if you don't know what I mean by permissions, I'd really advise you to head on over to the previous episode on plot permissions, get all the details on what they are and how they work. But for now, what we need to know is that these permissions can be overridden and changed manually on each plot, but Towny has some pre-made plot types with the different permissions set automatically to make them work for that particular plot. And this is really handy for setting up your towns in a really quick and user-friendly manner. So let's start and have a look at them now. Let's start with the embassy plot. Now, an embassy plot is a really handy plot type which essentially allows players from other towns to own land within your town without first having to leave their town and join your town. So by default, once you become a member of a town, you're then only able to claim plots within that town and its outposts, and you can't claim plots in another person's town. However, there may be times when you'd like a member of another town to come and create something in your town as a one-off, or maybe you just want your friends to have a vacation home. Well, this is really simply done in Towny by using the command plot set embassy whilst you're on the plot that you wish to sell as an embassy, and then you can change the price by simply doing /plot for sale and then put the cost at the end. Now once this is done, it'll now become claimable by any player who is not a part of your town using the command /plot claim. And embassy plots can also have the default price set using the command /town set embassy price and then the cost. That would then mean that any embassy plot that you claimed after would have that default price set automatically. And you can also set a daily tax rate that is different to a normal default plot's tax rate by doing town set embassy tax, all one word, and then the cost. Now that would mean anyone owning an embassy plot would pay that amount per plot per in-game day. Now the next plot that we're going to look at is the shop plot, and this is really great for setting up trading inside your towns and also between towns. Now most servers will have an economy plugin of some sort, and many of these plugins allow for shops, and these shops can be set only in specific town plots called shop plots. Now these are really easy to set up. As you can imagine, when you're on a plot, all you would have to do is type plot set shop, and that plot then becomes a shop and is able to have trade happen on it. It helps you to set up market districts within your towns to restrict where and when and how people can sell things. Now, as with the embassy plot, this has some really useful aspects to it. One, namely, it can cost someone more to own a shop plot than a residential plot. Obviously, as they're making money, it seems only fair that you as the mayor take your share. So just as with the embassy plot, the commands work the exact same way. Very simply, you would do /town set shop price and then the cost to set your default price. So that's how much someone would have to pay to buy a shop plot in a town. And then you can change the daily tax rate by doing /town set shop tax and then the cost. Our next two plots are resource plots, namely farm plots and wild plots. So first of all, farm plots. These are a really handy way of changing the permissions on a plot in a way that's more specific than you can achieve using just the normal permission commands. Essentially, when a plot is set as a farm, if a person has build permissions on that plot, they will only be able to build with the blocks that are listed in the config of Towny. Now that will have been done by your server. They will have defined what farm blocks are. They will be, as you'd expect, wheat, carrots, potatoes, beetroot, etc. Now that means that anyone with permissions can farm those crops, but they can't build on the land. They can't destroy the farmland itself or alter it anyway. So that means that even when you set the farmland to be a farm plot, you still need to set the permissions for the people you want to be allowed to farm on that land. So for example, if you want only residents to farm your farmland, you will need to go in and say plot set perm resident build to enable them to use that farm plot. And that will mean that those residents will be able to farm, but nobody else will be able to touch the crops that are growing on your farms. So our second resource plot is the wilds plots. Now these work in a really similar way to farm plots. The only difference is that the list of blocks that a player can interact with is different. So instead of crops such as wheat, carrots, potatoes, the blocks that a player can interact with would be trees, flowers, mushrooms, other harvestable blocks, even ores. So for example, you could use a wilds plot for a tree farm. Or even if you just want to have a way to protect the borders of your town. As you can see, ores are allowed, which means that a player can go down into caves and mine ores, but they can't destroy terrain willy-nilly. Now, if it happens that you're playing on a more up-to-date version of the Towny plugin, there are a couple of handy GUIs, graphic user interfaces, that can be accessed with a couple of really handy commands for your farm and your wilds blocks to see what blocks can be mined and what can't. So let's just run them now to show you. So we have Towny farm blocks, which brings up this display here that shows you all of the farmable blocks in a nice visual way, and if we come out of that we can also see the same for Towny wilds blocks, and there you go, those are the blocks that can be mined in a wilds plot. Now, just as with the farm plots, after you've set the plot to be a wilds plot by using the plot set wilds command, you're still going to need to add people to the permission line on that plot. So for example, if you want residents only to be able to interact with a wild plot, you would need to add residents to the perm line for that plot. Now our next set of plots revolve around combat and law enforcement in your town, and the first of those plots is the arena plot. So as you'll know if you saw the last video on permissions, one of the permissions that can be toggled on or off is PvP. Now if you have PvP toggled off in your town as a whole, there is one way of allowing PvP only in specific designated areas of town, and this is through the arena plot type. You would set a plot to arena by doing plot set arena really simply. Now when a plot is turned into an arena plot, PvP is automatically enabled for everyone as soon as they enter the plot. Now, this happens even when a person has PvP toggled off as a player. Importantly, friendly fire is also enabled on an arena plot, so it's a very dangerous place to be. On to jail plots. Now jail plots are probably one of the most fun plot types, but also one of the most complicated plot types in Towny. So let's go over briefly how to make a jail plot, and then I'll explain how they're used. So before you set a plot to being a jail, I advise you build the structure, whatever kind of cells you're going to have, first. Because when you use the command plot set jail, it will use the precise location that you're standing in as a jail spawn. That means that when a player is jailed, or if they die whilst they're jailed, they will return exactly to that spot, that jail spawn. Now you can move a jail spawn to a different location inside of the jail plot using /t set jail. Now that means that even though the whole plot is set as a jail, the cell that you are keeping your prisoners in is exactly where you set your jail spawn. Well, how are jail plots used? As we know, a mayor's job is a hard one, and maintaining order can often be a challenge. And this handy plot type allows a mayor to confine an unruly resident or town outlaw to a specified area within a jail plot. If a mayor is unhappy with one of the town's residents, the mayor will use the command /town toggle jail. If there's more than one jail, then you will put the number of the jail here, then resident's name, and then you have the option to also say how many days that they are jailed for. Jails are not limited to a mayor jailing their residents. Each town maintains a list of outlaws. If a player who is an outlaw is killed by someone with the sheriff town rank within the town borders, they too will become jailed. We've gone into how we get into jail, but how do you get out? Well, there are a few ways in which a person can regain their freedom. First of all, a mayor can choose to set them free using the jail toggle command again, which is /town toggle jail, the jail number, and then a resident name. Alternatively, they can pay the specified bail amount to the town that jailed them, which they would do using the command /resident jail pay bail. Or they can wait until their jail days have dropped to 0 if the mayor has specified how long they are jailed for. The resident can leave the town that they belong to and become a nomad, effectively making them no longer a resident of that town. And a server admin can also free them using the /TA resident player name unjail. But lastly, and frankly most excitingly, you can escape to freedom. Essentially, if a jailed player manages to escape their jail cell and get out of town to a wilderness plot, they'll effectively be free. Escaping is not as easy as it sounds though. Players are not allowed to teleport, they can't use ender pearls, unless that's allowed on your server via the Towny config, and if you're killed whilst making an escape attempt, you'll find yourself respawned back in your cell. Now, some mayors will opt for letting players escape via some difficult task. If they manage to get out of the jail plot and then run to the edge of town without being killed, they will have earned their freedom. The last two plots that we're going to cover are role-playing plots, and they are inns and banks. So, inn plots are fairly simple, but they will only work on certain servers. Now, some servers will have settings that limit the use of a bed so that they can only be used on a player's owned plot. Now, if that's the case, that means that an inn plot allows a player to use a bed on a plot that is not a plot that they own, effectively resetting their spawn point to another town. Once you've created an inn plot using the plot set in, that doesn't mean that absolutely anybody will be able to use a bed inside that plot. Effectively, enemies of the nation and outlaws of your town will not be allowed to use an inn plot's beds. Our last plot for this episode is going to be the bank plot. Now obviously the bank plots work by interacting with whatever economy plugin is used by the server that you're playing on, and that can vary from server to server. But essentially what a bank plot does is limit your ability to deposit money or withdraw money from a town, so that you can only do that whilst on the bank plot. Now this has different functions depending on which plugin is used. So for example, there is Towny, the new economy plugin, which allows for banknotes to be dropped by mobs that you kill. Now, with the use of this bank plot, this means that if you go out, hunt and kill a horde of monsters, get lots and lots of banknotes, you'd have to carry all of that precious reward all the way to a Towny bank plot in order to cash them, therefore enhancing the role-playing of Towny a massive amount. So there you have it folks, the full comprehensive guide into the plot types in the Towny Advanced plugin. Don't worry, there are going to be more to come, so if you're enjoying these tutorials, they're finding them useful, then don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button so you don't miss any new tutorials that we're going to be bringing out. And of course, if you have any ideas for things that you might find useful to have tutorials for, don't forget to hit me up in the comments below, give me your ideas, because I do take all of them seriously. But until next time folks, we'll see you in the next one.